Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. It's all about lead left, grow right. And Tony Marolt, of course, is here, the owner of his own company. He's on a mission from Kansas City, Missouri, but it's worldwide, affecting leaders. And he has this consulting and publishing company that really helps people and companies and corporations all lead better. He's also an author and so much more. Tony, take it away and introduce yourself because you have a lot of titles.
Sure. Yeah, I am chief leader and president. Pick chief leader specifically, since I have two focus. Foci, I guess technically is the word, but so one is on process integration, and the other is all about leadership. And I wrote a book called The Leadership Quotient, based on 9 years of active duty military service in the Navy, and 25 plus years in a Fortune 500 company at the time, Hallmark Cards.
Wonderful. Well, we're excited to have you here. We're going to do a little recap. Before we do, hold on. How do we contact you?
You can contact me by phone directly at my cell, 816-694-4656. You can also email me directly at tony.marolt, M-A-R-O-L-T, tony.marolt@gmail.com, or you can go out to my website, Lead Left, Grow Right. There's a lot of great material out there, leadleftgrowright.com, and submit a form, a contact form, and I will get right back to you.
Beautiful. And let's talk a little bit about what we talked about last time. It's a little recap of setting up and executing leadership experiments to develop people. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we talked about development being a huge part of, if you're a leader, whether it's since I believe everyone is a leader, period, the end. So you yourself can conduct leadership experiments, but your boss may have you be conducting leadership experiments with you. And the goal is to get growth in areas you may not have a firm grasp of yet, or you want personally to grow in. And some of the things we talked about last time that go directly to that, we talked about two major things. One was about resiliency. And we read through something called a little treatise on the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean.
And they all, which one are you? I remember.
Yeah, I'm definitely a coffee bean. I may not have been earlier, but you build a lot of resiliency. I went to the United States Naval Academy, so they specifically try to strip you down and build you back up. And in so doing, they are building in and upon any resiliency that you brought to there. And then life's events, and you and I talked about a couple of things in our lives where we've had to, be resilient, and they were very difficult things. And I thank you for sharing last time. So we talked about egg. Are you a carrot that kind of bends as soon as you get into the boiling water? Are you an egg, or are you a coffee bean where once you put in the coffee into the water, it becomes and transcends into something different and more powerful, better tasting, and that can be spread. And that's the kind of leader we're trying to build. And then the second thing I touched upon is, if you want to be a great leader and develop yourself or develop others, then you absolutely have to read about other great leaders. And one of the greatest leaders, in my opinion, was General Colin Powell, who was with us for quite some time, and he left us with Powell's Rules of Leadership. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I just wanted to pick out a couple that really I think are unusual but pretty cool. So one of them is, it ain't as bad as you think. It's going to look better in the morning. The second one was, get mad. So we're all entitled to get mad about something, then get over it. That's where a lot of us struggle, getting over being mad. And that's not productive. Be careful what you choose, because you might get it. You can't make someone else's choices. You shouldn't let someone else make yours. You can provide input to others, but ultimately the choice is theirs. And ultimately, any choice you make, good or bad or ugly, is yours, no matter how much input you receive. The ninth one, sharing credit. If you're the kind of person that needs to have the credit all the time, then you're not following this. You've got to, most people work with teams or on teams. You've got to be able to share the credit, not just say at the end of it, oh, well, so-and-so was the one who ran the project, so they get all the credit. No, that's a very terrible way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And it does speak to humility. And General Powell was, he was not a wimp by any means, but he definitely shared. If he had success, he knew who brought him that success, and it was others on his team. And last, don't take counsel of your fears or of naysayers, because those things will just do nothing but drag you down. So those are kind of the two main topics we talked about last time.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And love the recaps. Again, Tony Marolt here joining us. Let's get into today's agenda, which is really informal leadership power, correct? So non-official
Right.
leaders we're talking, and how does leadership then transfer from your personal life to your professional life and vice versa? So
Correct.
let's begin with that informal leadership power. Who are the informals? What does it look like, in a sense, in the military versus the regular civilian world? Go for it, Tony.
Yeah, great. As we discussed in my book, I believe everyone is a leader, period, the end. Not everyone has the capability, but everyone's a leader. And if you treat it as such, you're going to be able to grow and bloom your organization into something amazing. So the informals, those are the people, if I have a title of director, I have a title of vice president or supervisor, or whatever the official company title is, that's the formal leader, right?
Yeah.
You are given a position with a specific title, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But the informals, those are the people around you. It could be peers. It certainly can be the people you lead. And those are the informals. These are people that are leaders, but sometimes you have to recognize them. Sometimes you have to grow them. Or tap into them. And ultimately, if you're a great leader, you're tapping into everyone's leadership capabilities. And the reason I put something in about the military versus the civilian world. So in the military, for those of you that aren't familiar, I think everyone's familiar with the rank structure. But in every military branch, there's usually the first three pay grades where you're either an airman or you're a basic soldier or a seaman in the Navy. But as soon as you get to the fourth pay grade, it's called petty officer. And petty officers, and typically, well, in the Navy, it's called petty officers. I'll stick with what I know the best, right?
Of course.
So they have a specific rank. They are not the boss necessarily, or they could be the boss. At some point, they might be supervising groups of folks or running a shop on a ship, for instance. Let's say you're a welder and you're running a shop with other welders that have petty officers below you. So there's a recognition in the military that everyone is a leader after you get through the initial, hey, you're welcome to the Navy and serve a little bit. Then you start going up the ladder, which it's not formally recognized typically in a civilian corporation. Not until you probably get to supervisor. Well, in the Navy, for instance, the supervisors, middle management, that all comes when you become a chief or senior chief or master chief petty officer, which are the upper three enlisted ranks. So you can see in between your basic Navy sailor and the supervisors, the chiefs, there are a number of ranks that go before that, 3 of them, in fact. So the Navy recognizes that we need leaders that are below the supervisor level. In corporate America, that's not really true. We don't have people. Once in a while, you'll find something with a title like group leader. Now, that would be akin to a senior petty officer, but not a chief. So it's even more important if you're serving in a nonprofit or a for-profit organization that you recognize and tease out that leadership and then call it to the forefront for others. So,
And by the way, just your background, not everybody knows your service. Would you mind just sharing quickly? You were
oh
in the like
yeah,
for
yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
want.
big news.
Yep.
Sorry.
I bumped off the bus in Annapolis, Maryland. Just a young high school graduate from a small town in northern Minnesota. Immediately got my hair cut and got thrust into a world. I was like, what the heck did I just do? But anyway, it was a very trying experience, but boy, did I build me strength and resiliency and friendships that last a lifetime. So I went to the Naval Academy first, got my degree. And then once you graduate from the Naval Academy, you owe, since you didn't have to pay for that college, you owe 5 years in the military. So I served 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then I served another 4 beyond that until we had some family issues that made me separate from the Navy. So I was on 3 different ships. I got to teach at the Naval
Wow.
Academy when I went back. So it was a wonderful leadership experiences. That was kind of my initial forge in leadership, putting things
Perfect.
to practice that I had already been taught.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you
You're
for your
welcome.
service. You
You're
can
welcome.
continue, but just
All right.
you should be, I would talk about like all the time. I'd be so proud, but thank you. You're so modest.
So, we talk about this informal leadership, and why are they important is those are the people that behind the scenes, they're the ones that are most likely to be directing and influencing people, or the conversation that occurs beyond when you tell someone, okay, here's what we're going to do, our team, this is our goal. These are the folks that are putting those plans into action, even though they may not officially have a title of leader.
Yep.
And in the military, we call that soft power. I call it informal leadership power.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very, very, you may hold great sway over whether a group does something or doesn't do something, or how they do something. And that's informal leadership power. And the informals are the ones who really get everything done. So if you don't have the informals on board, or you don't take the time to recognize them, then you are not going to be very successful as a leader, because those are the people that you want. They're, to put it in today's terms, they are the influencers on Instagram and Facebook and any other social media.
Yeah.
And so skills that they possess are the same kinds of skills that you would in any leader. Great communication skills typically is way at the top. They know how to organize people. They understand how to read people and influence people positively. So many of the same skills that you would find at in a formal leader role, they're there, and they are actually practicing them every day. Yes, they might still be a technician and working their trade, so to speak, but they really have leadership skills in spades that can really drive your organization and its progress towards any vision that you're doing, or in the military to accomplish a mission. And one of the ways that, so these people are really, really important in either setting, so military or civilian. So how can you help them lead better? Well, first of all, you have to really dig in and recognize, and that could be some informal polling of people, getting to know individuals themselves, so you understand observation of how those individuals act in certain situations, a number of different ways that you can identify first. And then once you identify, then you can either have a formal sit down with them, or you can just conduct some leadership experiences yourself. And you have to also be on the lookout for these informal leaders, even in other parts of the organization, because you can still influence them. You could decide, wow, this person has just tons of talents. I'm going to see if they want me to mentor them. So they may not even be your direct responsibility in the organization, but you can find this talent anywhere in an organization. And so if that's important, then what's the repercussions if you don't do that?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have, you're going to have, whether it's a military or whether it's in a nonprofit or for-profit organization, you're going to have people leave. And right now, talent drain, given that we have many more openings than we have people for the openings, you can't afford to lose a single good person. So, but that's what's going to happen if you don't cultivate those people, because they will get frustrated. They will turn into, well, I brought all these ideas forward, but so and so, Tony doesn't ever listen to them. So fine, from now on, I'm not going to bring them forward because I feel like I get stonewalled at every turn. Or, I went to Tony for some help on an issue and he just blew me off completely. That's what causes people to leave, or in some companies causes them to transfer to another department as soon as the job opening, et cetera, et cetera. So that all hurts the organization. It's sort of like your garden, right?
Yeah.
If you don't plant
Mm-hmm.
the seeds and then you watch over the carrots or the potatoes or whatever it might be, then in fact you are going to not have a good product at the end of the season. You'll get tomatoes that are tiny, or potatoes that never grew roots, et cetera, et cetera. So the same thing happens in our real life if we don't take care of informal leaders. And by the way, you also can do this with formal leaders as well. You can still mentor them and recognize their talent, give them support, et cetera. But if we don't do it, especially with the informals, then we're going to have a garden crop that just withers on the vine and dies. And you don't want that, because every person is so unique and brings so much to the table. It's up to us to find in our garden the vegetables. So sometimes you have to uproot that and take a look and say, oh, these carrots aren't growing. What's wrong? Do I have the wrong amount of water, et cetera? Same thing as with people. If you don't take the interest to try and observe and learn and look and then assist where you can, you're not going to have a good garden. So does that all make sense?
Oh, yeah. You got lots of water in that garden and sunshine too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good soil would help too. You can't plant it in mud or in clay. So absolutely.
Perfect. Wow, we're good. We're good, Tony. We got 13 minutes. Continue to go, baby. 12 minutes. Bring it on.
Okay, so we talked about informal leadership power. So let's talk about a different subject, and this is, how does leadership or leadership skills, how do they transfer from your personal life to your professional life and vice versa? Or is there anything that can bridge across those two ways? So these are not all inclusive, but let me just rattle off real quickly. Here are some leadership skills that are practiced in my personal life and probably in most people's, yours and others. Communication, project management or organizational skills, problem solving, creative ideation, integrity, planning, motivation, counseling, change management, composure, compassion, and everything else. So that's everything else kind of makes it comprehensive. We just don't have time to go into, and nor would it benefit you as the viewer or the listener to do that. Okay, so does that seem reasonable to you, Jill, that those are leadership skills that can be practiced in your personal life?
I think so.
Yeah.
Why not? I got
Yep.
it. You
Yep.
got it. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now, just to compare,
Sure.
I wanted to illustrate,
Mm-hmm.
do skills transfer from personal life to professional life or vice versa? Okay, so I am going to read another list, and this is
Okay.
for your professional life. So
Got
listen
it. Got it.
carefully, see if there's any
I'm
differences
following. I'm
or
following.
whatever's going on. So let's go. Communication, project management or organizational skills, problem solving, creative ideation, integrity, planning, motivation, counseling, decisiveness, change management, composure, compassion, and everything else.
Hmm.
So did you hear any astounding
Similar.
things in there? Similar.
Astounding.
They're exactly the same if you were to go through
Exactly.
each one of those, right?
Very similar.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah. So the reason I did that was to illustrate
that.
People
Yeah.
think, oh, my leadership skills in my my job are very different in what I observe in others or myself than what I have in my personal life. And the answer is typically they're not different at all. How you apply them
Is.
definitely can change, right?
Yeah.
But you still have the leadership skills. If we're expecting people, let's say you're a director and you're expected to have great communication skills,
Mm-hmm.
the audience is different. But when you go home and you're talking to your spouse or significant other or your kids, communication skills are just as important and as vital. The only difference is your audience is now shifted. And
Yep.
so how you communicate now shifts. Instead of
Ah.
talking about, ones and zeros, and if you're in technology, or instead of talking about marketing
Mm-hmm.
or, procurement or something else, you change the language. So now it's like, you do not go outside to catch a school bus in a pair of shorts when it's 42-degree weather out there. And that's
I'm
a
laughing.
real
It hurts to laugh, but yeah, that's my father. I'm sorry. That's my father.
well.
He does that. Oh,
So it was my grandson 2 days ago. The weather has dipped here, and I had told him, okay, we got to make sure everything. So I walked out to see what he's put on, and sure enough, he put on his long soccer um, socks and short shorts and nothing else. And I'm like, it's 40 degrees out there. Are you kidding me? So again, you have a different conversation, but you're addressing some of the same
mm-hmm.
problems in some ways. Problem solving. The only difference is you're solving different problems at home than you would at work. At work, you're trying to solve work-related problems to help the company to go forward or to accomplish an objective. At home, that problem solving might be, Dad, um, Mary broke my piano keyboard. Can you fix it? Okay.
Oh,
Well, you might have to get creative and look on YouTube, or maybe you already are a whiz with that.
true.
Same thing, but it's a different problem to solve. So, um, does that kind of resonate with you? Can you see the parallels there really are between your
They're
personal life
so
and your work life?
similar. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so similar. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and that's why, when I say everyone is a leader, well, if these skills are the same, they're just the how is different, or the what, or the application's different, then you are a leader. And it can start at home,
Yep.
but in the workforce, you have similar challenges, and that you can solve those actually in the workplace. So your skills, it just means you have to have a wider repertoire of communication skills so you can deal with the stuff at home as well as the stuff at work. Or
Yeah.
problem solving might be, maybe there's let's say you're the head of a hospital, and there's issues with the ER. So problem solving there might be more
Huh.
life and death than it is at home, where you're trying to literally problem solve with your child doing new
So
math, and
true.
you're trying to figure it out and helping them solve a problem.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of the same there. So um, I just I think that the point, I think people might have said, okay, well, we're going to get a good, a good listen on what makes it different, etc. Most of the time, you will, in fact, if you drive down to the real issues or the real skills that you need, it's the same skill applied in a different manner. So,
Interesting.
and often, so then the next question is, well, what can I use at home, at work? Well, let's say at work, you're not the most terrific communicator in the world. You struggle with, let's say, giving performance reviews, one-on-one conversations with your employees that you're in charge of.
Yep.
Well, maybe you are a really great mom or dad who has a really good way of communicating with a 5-year-old. Well, if you stop and think about, okay, how do I why do I talk to my son? Why do you talk to, for instance, Jackson differently than at work? Well, if you think about those, you may say, oh yeah, I kind of treat Jackson this way to get results. And then you say, hey, well, maybe this will work at work where, I'm struggling with so and so. And the same thing can happen at work, how you treat people. Let's say you're really good at work at recognizing people and patting them on the back, and you look to your personal life and say, man, I really wish I had not wasted that opportunity to praise Jackson when he got an A on his test or kicked a goal in soccer or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
So they are interchangeable. You just have to open, in camera sense, you have to open your aperture so you can capture
That's
more
true.
ways of working it.
So I like that.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I thought next time maybe we'll take a crack unless I find something else that I really am excited to present first. Leadership challenges across generations, ethnic cultures, corporate cultures, etc. That's a big topic, but maybe we can just kind of muddle through some of the key points there and talk about what that is. What does that look like right now in society if you have to bring leadership skills to bear against different individuals or different groups in the workplace?
Perfect. Sounds like a plan, Mr. Marolt.
All right.
How do we
All
reach
right.
you?
You can reach me, my personal cell, 816-694-4656. You can reach me through my personal email, tony.marolt, first and last name, Marolt, tony.marolt@gmail.com. Or you can go out to leadleftgrowright.com and fill out a contact form, and it will shoot right over to my email, and I can answer you directly through that mechanism.
Great.
Or you can show up at the door, but give me some advance notice, right?
Yes, and normal hours, not in the middle of the night.
Thank
you, Tony. You have a fantastic day. Bye-bye
too,
now.
Jill.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.